Hi guys, I'm here and welcome to the workshop. I have been asked many times to post some training related videos, and actually I was quite hesitant to do that because I'm no expert myself when it comes to training. I know and have some basic knowledge about it, but I wasn't really able to advise people in the way I can advise them when it comes to bike tech and how to make a bike more efficient, more aerodynamic, or just long lasting in general. But for this winter and for the next season, I decided it's time to step up my knowledge in terms of training, both in theory and, well, just simply in execution itself. So I decided to look more into that. Luckily, I found the guy named Dylan Johnson, who's a great coach, does great videos here on YouTube. And I went through some Training Peaks materials as well. And I've done this because my goal for the next season is the same, to win the Time Trial National Championships in the elite category. Unfortunately, last year I wasn't able to pull that off. I really had no idea what I'm gunning for in that. Now I've done the event once, I came up sixth because, well, to be honest, of a terrible performance, the worst of my year. Uh, I think I can chalk it down to being not prepared for the heat properly, because I've done 50 watts less than what I've expected to for that duration. But anyway, now I know what the competition is like. I know that I have the potential to win there, and I also know how to set up my bike, my position and everything to be super fast, which I've already done last year. This year I'm going to use different equipment, but I have pretty much everything dialed now. From the skin suit to the bike, to the wheels, to the tires, the group set, everything I already have, so it will be done much sooner with a much bigger advance before the event itself. So the technical part being completed, I want to focus on the training, and for that first I need to address a couple of mistakes that I've been making, and I was able to point these out. And if you follow my Strava, then you know that I've changed my training quite significantly compared to last year's. So I'm going to go and read out my mistakes step by step and then explain what changes are due or were done to improve on that. So first, my training in the previous years lacked a real sense of structure and periodization. My training basically was quite consistent and even throughout the year, which is better than inconsistent training, but not as good as training with progressive overload or real periodization. What do I mean by this? I didn't really have an off season, which I had now 2 or 3 weeks of very easy training, very low volume as well, just to recover, because then your body sets up, your hormone levels normalize, etc. There are a couple of performance advantages in that. And then for this part, now in the winter I'm doing what's called, I already mentioned, progressive overload. It means that each week I'm stepping up the training load, both in terms of volume and stress or intensity, by a certain margin, and then after a couple of weeks I have an easy week just to recover. Then I start all over again with these steps. The idea behind this is that if you do a constant amount of training stress, applying it to your body, then your body gets used to that and doesn't really make adaptations anymore. This way it can't really settle in for one rhythm. And even though I haven't reached a plateau as such, because throughout the years I've upped my FTP or power numbers by some margins, which I'm happy about, but if I continued in this trend it probably wouldn't be the case for much longer. So this is one big change that I'll make, that I plan out my months, training months and weeks in advance to have a certain goal for training load, and that will increase or decrease depending on what's needed. Then one more thing I didn't do is I wasn't specific enough to my events when it came to my training, because I always tended to do a bit of everything in terms of intervals. I've done a bit of sprint intervals, anaerobic, aerobic, VO2, not too much, and then a lot of tempo and not that much threshold, because I believe that this was a good mixture for the events that I was doing. And even though before the event itself I was a bit more specific when it came to time trialing efforts, I really didn't go all in. So right now it's the off season, there are no real races. I'm decided to skip cyclocross as well, to be really focused on time trials, because that's a completely different type of effort. So I decided to just skip that to be able to really focus on that. So what I'm doing right now, as you may have been able to see, is a lot of endurance work, which takes up my volume in the training, but it's not very intense at all on the bike. And where I do get my intensity is from strength training, and that's an idea with which I've been playing around quite a lot now, if strength training will benefit me or not. But then I looked into it and it's more or less clear cut. If you do strength training, your power on the bike will increase. The mechanisms behind that are quite complicated, but according to every single study that I've looked at, it just works. So we'll see the effects of that hopefully real soon. So that's my intensity. Going back to specificity, yeah, as I said, no real cycling specific workouts apart from the volume base endurance training, whatever you may call it. I plan to continue in this strength training regime until the end of January, when I will do an FTP test, and from then on I'm going to dial the strength training back a little bit and bring out the intervals on the bike. Hopefully by then I'll be able to ride outside a bit more, because now it's not really possible and I really want to do my intervals outside. Also, one thing that is lacking, that I still don't have my time trial bike, or to be precise, I have everything ready except the frame, which is a bit inconvenient because riding a road bike on the trainer is not that comfortable for me. It's much better to just be able to go down into those air bars if you're doing longer rides, but it's what we have. Anyway, once that's done, I will really focus on doing threshold intervals, and I will ramp up the intensity, bring down the volume a little bit, and it will be more and more pronounced the closer the races come. Also, I've set 3 key events for which I'm planning to peak for. Previously I haven't done that. So the first one is the Morbisch time trial in Austria. It's quite a famous one, 26 kilometer up and down. So that's one that I want to do well at. It's exactly 2 months before the nationals, so it's a good kind of a preparation event. Also decent distance, although not quite as long. Then the nationals themselves, end of June, and then beginning of September, King of the Lake, very long 47 kilometer time trial, also in Austria, and some other races in between. I've yet to choose, but these 3 I want to really focus on as my A races. Then I've already touched on intervals. In the previous years I've done lots and lots of interval training, and most of that wasn't high quality, and the reason was that, well, the quantity was too much. and I just wasn't effective at completing the preset targets when doing these intervals, and that's where my training suffered. Because in order to be good or successful with completing quality workouts, you have to be really fresh for those high intensities, and I never really was, because I always try to put in quite a lot of intensity into my training. So that's no longer the case. I hope it will do the benefit. I'm aiming to do 2 or 3 interval days per week before the key events in the race season. Then touching on recovery, I usually recover pretty well and pretty quickly because I really take care of my sleep and also the hydration and the nutrition. I have to change, or well, I did already change one fact in my nutrition, and that's the again, more the quality of the foods. I try to eat much more fruit and much more unprocessed food. So even though it's plant-based and high carb, low fat, enough protein, that's the key there. But even within that, I try to focus on a lot of fruit and unprocessed foods. And also I try to, well, also through this, but lower my calorie density a little bit, so I can get a little bit leaner for the season, and it's starting to work. We'll see how that goes, but no huge changes in there. It's more like an adjustment and a more focused approach. So that's basically sums up the mistakes that I've been doing in my training, and also the fixes I have applied. So we'll see about the results in a couple of months. Also, I'd like to thank Dylan for all the useful tips. I watched every single one of the videos to put as much information in there as I can to help me. And on top of this, so I already have a maniac grade equipment. Now that I will have maniac grade training, using these tips, I hopefully be able to put together a very fast package in myself for the time trials. I have also a couple of improvements in my kit, but we'll talk about it later. And I've been thinking about 3 things or devices on top of that which I want to implement. So the first one is the Halo neurostimulator, which works by basically stimulating your brain to put it in a so-called state of neuroplasticity. So it forces your body to make bigger or more intense adaptations for the training that you're doing. Some athletes have used this with great success. So I'm really keen to trying out this device. It's not all that expensive, so I'm going to go for it. Then I was also thinking about a hypoxia generator, which is a machine that essentially reduces the oxygen content of the air you're breathing in, simulating a high altitude environment, which should increase your hematocrit and hemoglobin levels and thus your performance. This is a very expensive device, so hopefully I'll be able to get my hands on one and use it before the key events to dial in those extra gains. And as for the kit, I'm all about aerodynamics and aero testing. So now the NoCO or NoCO, I don't know how that's pronounced, Connect aero sensor is finally commercially available. I'm also looking to get my hands on that to complement the aero testing that I will do in the future and the ones that I've already done, to really dial in every detail to perfection. So yeah, these are the plans for the next season and the changes that I've going to make. So pretty much sums up my performance perspective. If you want to stay in tune with what I'm doing and trying to go as fast as possible, then don't forget to tune into the channel later on, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out. It's all for the day. Thanks for watching and see you next time.